Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another video. We are recording a podcast episode after a long time, but that's because we've been busy, but that's no excuse. Because it's also a bit ironic. Today's topic is about habits, and we broke our habit of recording videos consistently. So this
The
is
thing
also a
is,
reflection for us. But yeah,
yeah, we originally started this off as a project, but we love doing it, and it's kind of, we've built habits and learned a lot through this process. It's pretty, due to some reasons we couldn't do it for like the past few weeks, and also we could argue it's a little bit of procrastination, but we're back this week and we're gonna keep grinding. But
yeah.
yeah,
So wait,
yeah,
so firstly, before we get into habits, like if you don't know what a habit is, you are dumb. So just go on Google, search up what a habit is. But basically, everything that we have learned about habits is either from the two either of these two books, Atomic Habits by James Clear and The Power of Habits. I forgot by who, but something Newman. But we'll put those two links in the bio or in the description so that you guys can check them out. We would 100% recommend both
yeah,
of these books. Everything we've learned is from this. We are just condensing and condensing the knowledge from these books and putting forward our opinions about it. So feel free to read them. So
yeah,
we will get started now. What are habits? As I said earlier, go search it up. You should know what this is. But good and bad habits are
yeah,
the topic that we need to talk about, right? Because I read, I mean, a big part of Atomic Habits is the idea that habits, whether they're good or bad, are compounded, right? Everything you do is
yeah,
compounded. And let's say if you improve, I think that's like if you improve for 365 days by 1%, which means 1.01 to the power 365, that gives you, I think, 37 point something. And that just shows the power of small changes that compound on top of each other. And the point is that whether you compound positively or negatively, the results will compound or the habits will compound into the
right,
results.
right.
So, yeah, Aryan, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah. So, ever since we're born, we're kind of put into this routine. As we grow up, we're put into like different ages. We're set to do certain things in certain days, and we're put into certain habits that we're not really aware of. Things that are mundane and it's like routine. Like let's say brushing your teeth in the morning every single day. It's a habit, right? But you don't really classify it as a good or bad habit. It's kind of neutral.
Mm,
So there's I mean, as in it doesn't come directly, right? Because it's something that comes naturally to all of us, um because of that routine that we set. And so we're specifically talking about the habits that we want to change and the habits that we want to keep, right?
yeah,
There are habits, ever like even when you start this journey of like self improvement, right? You start to notice habits that other people have that you don't, and you want to implement in your life, right? Then you start to notice the habits that you have in your life that aren't very favorable, right?
mm,
Somewhere in between that, like you start to realize the ones that are pretty small, right? Both cases, if you have small habits that are good and small habits that are bad, eventually it compounds into who you are as a person. And they say take the baby steps first, right? So when you have a good habit, you have to take the small things, small habits, and then move towards becoming a better person. The same way for bad habits. If you have small things, like let's say you wake up at 7:50 in the morning, and then you go back to sleep for 5 extra minutes, and then you procrastinate, right? It's a small thing, but it's still a bad habit because you do that every single day. And
exactly.
one of the processes that we've learned to eliminate those is, the first thing is just identify them. And one method I found very effective in that way is just do like going through a normal day without having any bias or influence, taking a notebook and then writing down everything that you do on a daily basis. Just write down everything that you do it doesn't matter if it's good, bad, neutral, doesn't matter. Just write down every single thing. Um, the good habits, put a plus sign next to it. The ones that you want to keep and you don't want to change, you should keep them constantly, keep doing them. And then the ones that are neutral, like brushing your teeth, getting up in the morning, things that you do every single day that aren't don't really require any change or whatever. You just keep them. You put an equal sign next to them, and then the bad habits that you want to get rid of and shouldn't stay in your. You don't want to become that person. You put a negative sign next to it, and then you can go from there. So now, do you want to
Exactly.
elaborate on that?
Yeah. So, wait, I found two things that you said very interesting. I think these could branch out into whole different like podcast episodes or hours of discussion, but I just wanted to quickly condense those things. Firstly, you spoke about why habits or why like that habit specifically of just sleeping again for 5 minutes is bad, right? So if you think of
Yeah.
it, like of course doing it for one day is not that big an issue, and it never is an issue, right? Like doing something that's bad, like a bad habit that people know, like say drinking, right? Like if you do that
Hmm.
just once in your life, let's say, that's not a bad thing. But the issue is that we are talking about habits, and habits are those things that are done repetitively. And the issue is, let's say you do those 5 minutes of sleep or 5 minutes of extra sleep where you've already woken up and you go back to bed for 5 minutes. What that is essentially, I would like to call it opportunity cost, right? Because opportunity cost
Yeah.
is you're doing something, but you could have been doing something else. And like, I mean, in economics, from whatever economics I know, which is very minimal, it's just the opportunity you missed out for doing something else or for spending on something else, right? So over
Yeah.
here you spent 5 minutes on this, but let's say you could have spent those 5 minutes meditating or like taking a better shower or brushing your teeth better. I don't know, right? Like just 5 minutes of better use. And if you do that, if you consider 365 days of that, now you have wasted 365 into 5 minutes, which is a lot of time, right? You could have done a lot in that amount of time.
Yeah.
So the point is that that's how these small bad habits compound. And that's one thing. The second thing, which you said in the middle, which I really liked, is that you said that things compound, like these habits compound into who you are, right? And I think that brings out a huge point in James Clear's book, Atomic Habits,
Yeah.
about identity and identity oriented goals versus I forgot what the other one was, but it's essentially goals that you consider as just goals and identity driven goals. And the point of that is like, what's the difference? Okay, like generally food for thought. What's the difference between a winner and a loser? Because everyone says set goals, and obviously a loser and a winner both think of winning, right? So
Exactly.
it can't be the goal that is what separates the loser from a winner. It's something else. And
Yeah.
that something else is the system of habits that we follow. And that's exactly what James Clear talks about. And I think that's extremely interesting because once we set a goal about not like achieving something or not doing something, but instead a goal about being someone, right? That's way different. Like, because, okay, let's take a personal example. I am honestly not a very consistent reader. I don't read very often. So what James Clear says is that instead of saying I will read this book, right? That's just a goal about a task, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
affect you personally. So how you would phrase that for an identity oriented goal, which would be far more effective according to James Clear, is I am a reader. I read books on a daily basis. And with that, you're
Yeah.
already a new person and all you have to do is just fulfill your own identity, which is much easier than fulfilling a task. So that's one big thing. So yeah, so talking about
Yeah.
this, I think we'll move to the next part of it, which is, Aryan, would you like to talk about the habit pattern, which
Well, yeah,
is
before that, I just
yeah,
want to go on a little bit about identity. 'Cause I like that the point that when you have when you have a goal, right? Like you said, it there's nothing like identity. Let's take two extremes: a winner and a loser.
yeah,
Um, there's no difference take the if you take the main goal in mind, right? And there's people have said this in many different ways, but if you chase the destination, you'll eventually get there, but there's nothing past that. You're in that one place. But if you chase the process, you eventually become what you want to be. And
Exactly.
if like the process is the most, if this is what James did in his book. um let's say you want to be an athlete, right? The destination would be winning that 100-meter race for the tournament, right? And
Hmm.
you work hard, you eventually win the race, but then you just give up there. You eat after, like, eat whatever you want after the race is done. You're done being an athlete. You lose everything that gained over the past few months. But if you focus on the process, if you think about how eventually become an athlete, you run, you train every day, even comes, you train every day, you make sure you take that 1% step every single day to become a better athlete, and then you keep compounding that habit, and you make it efficient for yourself. People talk about habits in general, but it also has to be very personalized. If you keep doing that, if you love the process more than the destination, you'll eventually become who you want to be, and that'll become a part of your identity rather than being a superficial goal that you set for yourself that isn't very achievable because you don't even have a plan. It's the process that really matters. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the main things. And
100%.
you know um like eventually you start talking more about this. I want to bring up the next point, which is the habit patterns that people form. So now, would you want to go over the stencil or the main
Yeah.
pattern that we
Sure.
create?
So basically, what these two books suggest is a very clear framework as to how habits are formed and what habits are. In the
Yeah.
sense, a habit is basically a set of cues, or maybe a certain cue, a craving, a response, and then a reward. So to elaborate, a cue. Okay, Aryan, just give me an example of a habit, any habit.
Let's say getting up in the morning every day.
Getting up in the morning, right? So a cue for that would be your alarm clock, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And your craving would be, say, you need to wake up and use the washroom, maybe. I
yeah.
don't know, right? Um, the response to that would be you actually get up,
Getting up. Yeah.
get out of bed, and the reward would be you've used the washroom and your craving is fulfilled, right? And that is how a habit is formed. Now let's take another example. Let's say people who eat desserts or sweets after every meal, right? So the cue is
Yeah.
obviously completing the meal. The craving is obviously the savory feel in your mouth, and now you're craving just a taste of sugar. And the response is you open the fridge, you take out a piece of chocolate and put it in your mouth. And the reward is the satiation and the flavor that you feel in your mouth now, which is more sweet, right? And that's obviously
Exactly.
why people do it. So that is the fundamental of the habit pattern, which is what is spoken about by James Clear. And
James Clear's book.
yeah, and the point of this is that you can now use this knowledge, this framework, to, let's say you have a cue. Okay, how do I show this? I wanna, okay, let's say we have these four fingers. This is the cue, this is the craving, this is the response, and this is the reward. Now let's say um okay, yeah, like let's use the same example as um the sweet, right? So your your cue, and now let's say I want to change a habit. What they suggest you do is you have the same cue, right? You use the same cue, which is you complete your meal. The craving is now instead of I guess having a sweet tooth and satiating your desires, you now your craving is to get fitter, right? So the craving,
Yeah.
when that changes, then after that, your response automatically changes, or automatically, or you can also put in a system for that. So now your
Mechanically.
response, yeah, now your response is to change the the process of
Not eating the
opening the
sweet.
fridge
Yeah.
into, now say, going for a walk. And the reward for that is of course not immediate, and I think this also fits into the entire dialogue of immediate versus delayed gratification. And
Yeah.
so, like, of course, so if the reward is an immediate reward, you're more likely to stick to the habits that you formed due to that reward. And if the reward is a delayed gratification reward, if it gratifies you on a longer time frame, you are unlikely to
Yeah.
stick to it for as long. But those who do stick to it. My apologies. They get a better reward, at least in my opinion. Right. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's one
One of the main,
fundamental idea. Yeah, go
yeah,
for it.
so now before you go, like on this point, one of the major things that we could go on and on about, especially since you're a biology student, he talks about how dopamine has a huge, like it's very significant when it comes to building and destroying habits.
Yeah,
And there's that whole point of anticipated, like the dopamine high that you get from anticipation, the dopamine high that you get from eventually receiving the progress in this case. And so one key factor in actually developing a habit is to realize when it comes to fitness, progress is not immediate. So it's you see it over a period of time and you eventually learn to appreciate it. So that makes the habit that much harder to, take in you to,
exactly.
and actually become a habit in your life. And therefore, most people do everything for the end result. In this case, we talked about the process. We take the process in mind, and we say that, we love going to the gym, for example. That in mind, instead of looking for what progress you made so far, you look at things that you things that you started doing, like right there on the spot, like say, let's say progressive overload. You keep the process in mind and you keep going, and eventually you will see where you've reached from
I
before.
actually
So
think
yeah.
I actually think even I've never thought of it that way. I think that's a wonderful way of thinking of it. That even for these long-term goals, right, that you have in mind, and the delayed gratification tasks, essentially, besides for
Yeah.
changing your identity around them, you can also focus on the process by making like micro rewards for yourself, if I'm getting what you're saying correctly, right? And I think that's a
Yeah,
wonderful, yeah, I think that's a wonderful idea. So, one thing which I mean, I'm just passionate about, like, the brain and let's like neuroscience, right? And I just wanted to talk about one thing specifically about dopamine. There was a study conducted on rats. This was, of course, in the 1900s. And this was a study conducted on rats and their baseline dopamine. And this was extremely interesting. So, what happens is, so this study of rats suggests that when they have a habit of getting cheese, or getting cheese as a reward of pressing a button, so the habit is clicking a button, their reward is getting cheese, right? That releases so much dopamine in anticipation of the reward. So they don't actually get dopamine when they eat the cheese. They get dopamine when they are looking for the button to click, which would
yeah,
eventually give them the reward. And that is mind blowing to me, because it's that's actually what keeps us motivated, right? It's the anticipation of the reward that keeps us motivated and keeps us, I guess, focused on the task and on the response, which in this case was clicking the button. I found that
yeah.
I found that like very cool. But yeah,
The main target audience for this book that James Clear clearly, it makes clear, no pun intended, is that um is the people who want to take habits in their lives, people who want to take good habits and make it a part of themselves, something he preaches in his book, taking habits and making them, your identity, as we mentioned earlier, as a part of your identity. And eventually, that's why people come and read this book,
yeah,
mainly because they want to take a good habit in. and they want to become that person. And so there are many methods, and the one, one of the specific methods that James Clear talks about, and you can reverse it to actually remove bad habits, which is again an important part of becoming the person that you want to be, right? Is through a four-step process that he uses to build good habits. This is the first step, is making the habit obvious, right? In your environment, you have to, you see a habit, you have to make it, you have to make, wait, I'll just actually just list them out before giving an introduction to each of them. Building good habits comes by first making the habit obvious, then making it attractive, and then easy, and then satisfying.
Yeah.
So, as we mentioned earlier, making a habit satisfying is also very important, because you have to get some reward out of it. As a human being, it's human nature to be attracted to things that give yield a reward, right? um First step, making a habit obvious. Now this comes through many ways, but you have to realize what you want. And if it's something like being shredded by the end of 2023, it's you make the habit obvious by things like fixing the environment around you, making it let's say more fitness oriented. Like, I have a pull-up bar in my room.
I
every
was just
time
about to
i
say that.
yeah, every time I leave my room or come in, I do three pull-ups just for fun.
Yeah, and the
And
same
it's
way you could also like just lay around a bunch of healthy snacks like fruits and vegetables instead of chocolates and cakes lying around on your table. That's
yeah, so
also
just
making it more obvious.
basically just setting yourself up for
Yeah.
you haven't yet taken these habits seriously, but you're making sure you take the first few baby steps, the right steps. Even for a small little habit, you need to take these steps to make sure you get that right, because being consistent is what's important. And setting your environment, which is a huge chapter in this book, is one of the first steps to making it more obvious. And
Mm.
there are many other ways, but main thing is to just set yourself up for the habit that you're about to do. The next step is making it attractive, and this is a lot easier said than done. But your
Mm.
habits need to be something that appeals to you, because let's say you want to study 2 or 3 hours a day for because you're lagging behind or something. It may sound like an amazing achievement to do something like that. You may do it for the first few days, but then you start to realize that it's very monotonous, and you can't really stick to it past a few days, because you won't find the habit very attractive in itself. And that's why you take steps to make the habit itself more attractive. Let's say
Mm.
25-minute breaks between studying for hours, right? You take 25 minutes, sorry, you study for 25 minutes, and then you take a 5-minute break. Okay, the
Bro,
break
just
can
messed up the Pomodoro technique.
yeah, my fault. I was okay. 25 minutes of studying, and then 5 minutes of having a break, right? You get to do whatever you want in the break, whatever you like to do. So you're getting a reward for that, which we'll talk about later. But you're making it attractive. You're making the habit appealing to you, so you end up doing it more. As Sunav said, this is the Pomodoro technique, and
Yeah.
it's very effective in keeping you in check for the next few let's say weeks, because you're planning to do this habit for a long time, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes a
Just
part of
add
your
on.
identity.
Yeah, could I just
Yeah,
add on? So I think
go
another way
go.
of making it very attractive is, let's say you want to start, okay, personal example, we both want to start boxing, right?
Yeah,
What's the best way to start? I'd say, like, if we move to an environment where boxing is considered like normal behavior and it's very well accepted, like our natural instinct to just fit in would almost force us to get engaged in that habit, right? And that's why, like, say, for us, the solution that we found is joining a boxing club. And the second we do that, I mean, like, half the issue is solved
yeah,
because we join that environment, and in that environment, certain actions are attractive. Like eating junk food in a boxing club or in a gym, like that is not an attractive habit, right? Attractive, obviously, in the sense that you wouldn't want to do with that. So yeah,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, then obviously attractiveness is something you need to take in making a habit more consistent. But the next step is making it easier, and this is actually not spoken about enough, because we always talk about these huge goals that we want to be, let's say, the richest man in the world, or the fittest, most good looking guy possible out there, right? Whatever.
Yeah,
And there are always these fitness plans and things that steps that people tell you to take, um and they seem, they're very glamorous, right? But when you actually put it into use, it's harder than you expect, and it's not personalized, because you're forcing yourself to do something that's way past your limits, and everyone starts off somewhere, right?
yeah,
uh, and that's why a huge step to making a habit appealing again, or like at least being more consistent at it, is to make it easier for yourself and more personalized, so it doesn't have to be something that's a challenge for you every single day, even though we promote, as masculinity promotes challenge, right? It's very important to realize that something that's easy, eventually you can progressive overload. If you make it easy, it's easier to
get
complete on a
started.
on a daily
Yeah.
basis.
So
Exactly.
just to give an example, like let's say I want to start the habit of cycling every day, but my cycle is parked inside of my garage, and I have
Yeah.
to every time I have to take it outside. Then there's also a lock on it, so I have to unlock it, and then I have to go cycling, right? If
Yeah.
I had to just make it easier for myself, I mean, obviously, forget all the safety stuff and all, just for a hypothetical situation, forgetting practicality, I just leave my cycle outside, unlocked, and boom, I can now just step outside my house and start cycling. Like there's literally very little friction in that process as compared to the first process. And by doing that, the habit also becomes more accessible, for the lack of better words.
Yeah, and so I've talked about this important word, or concept rather, that James talks about through his book, which is friction, right?
Yeah,
And he uses that to eliminate bad habits and make good habits easier to put into your life, right?
yeah.
Um, Basically, the more friction you have, the harder it is to actually
Do yeah, the
do,
habit.
right? Do the habit. And so you want to have a higher friction with habits that are worse for you, that you don't really want in your life, and you want to have like little to no friction for habits that you have to keep in your life, right? And the thing is, this pull-up bar in my room, let's take it again. It's right in front of me. Actually, your environment comes in both making it obvious and making it easier, because this pull-up bar that's right in front of me, I just have to, I just have to get up, walk a few steps, and then it's right there in front of me. It's in
Yeah.
front of my eyes, and it's easy to do. I don't have to go to the gym downstairs.
Exactly,
um
as compared to me, I have to walk like 5 to 10 minutes every time I want to go and do a pull-up. So yeah,
yeah.
as you said, it makes it easier. So now moving on to the fourth rule, which is make it satisfying. The point of this is to essentially every time you complete a habit, make yourself feel rewarded or have like, they always talk about positive and negative reinforcement. Like that's exactly what this refers to. So when you make it satisfying, you're trying to put in positive reinforcement for a habit, which just means basically reward yourself appropriately and to say I don't know, like there are various ways of doing this, right? There's one way which is you'll
Yeah.
have a habit tracker, and in a habit tracker, like it's kind of unsatisfying to, like, say you have a tick, 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 and then if today you don't feel like doing a habit, it's very I don't know, at least maybe it's just me, but apparently it also appeals to a lot of people. Like putting an X mark there after putting tick for so long is just extremely unsatisfying. So you would much rather just do the task quickly and tick it off, right? And I think
Yeah.
If that works for you, it works for you. If it doesn't, then find another way to make it satisfying for yourself. Which can also be another rule which a lot of people talk about, like never miss it twice. For example, if you want to start going to the gym, you let's say you go one day and the next day you don't go, but you're like, if I don't go again, it'll be a huge issue. So make a rule for yourself, just don't miss it twice in a row. If you even if you miss it once, don't miss it twice. And you see that most of the days you do end up going is, and every time you don't go for one day, you will go the next day. If that works.
And
So, and these are just different methods that work for
yeah,
different people. So I think it's important, like the underlying rule for this entire idea of habits is find what works for you, right? If whether it's a habit tracker, whether it's changing your environment, whether it's using the 2 day or two rule, like the rule of two, or whether it's like changing the cue or changing the craving or changing the action itself or reducing friction. Like there's so many techniques out there, but it just comes down to what you find appealing and what you would rather change for yourself.
and that's the beauty of actually loving the process that he talks about. Because if you love the process, it becomes so much more appealing rather than seeing progress every single day is not. It's something that just doesn't happen, right?
Mm.
You don't suddenly become a winner overnight. So loving the fact that you've done the habit for a consistent number of days is also satisfying in itself. Like, for example, the fact that I have a 57-day streak on Duolingo as of now, right? It's a subtle flex, but um, I don't feel like much of like, I haven't, though I don't feel like I've made much progress in Spanish, even though things like it must have happened, right? It must have compounded.
Yeah.
I don't feel the progress, right? But I get satisfaction in the fact that I've done this habit for 57 days in a row.
Yeah. And yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's another form. Just make sure you love the process and you don't have to worry about the end goal. You eventually reach that.
Exactly.
That's
And if I may just add like a personal note, like I personally have seen like Aryan's way of getting motivated is just seeing that number go up every day. Like every day he'll
yeah,
just come up to me, he'll show me his phone. He's like, oh, look, today it's 57 now. I mean,
yeah.
yes, like a few days ago it was 40 something. I mean, obviously, because that's how time works, but like
I
he
do
did it
seek Sunil's
every day.
validation. Yes, I do seek his validation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think like the last note before we end this entire podcast episode is this one quote which I read in The Power of Habits by Charles Duhigg. Apologies if I pronounce his name wrong, but the quote that I took away from this entire thing, which is obviously ingrained, which in which the ideas of habits are ingrained, is if perfectly executed, a routine is perfect. And what this means, again, I think bringing everything together, finding your ideal way of performing habits differently than others or similarly to others, however you prefer it. If you perform a specific routine that you have dedicated yourself to, and obviously considering the routine is appropriate for your goals and the and the systems set in the routine will actually get you to your goals. If that is perfectly executed, it's perfect. Like perfection, obviously we say you can never be perfect, but this is probably the closest one can reach to perfection. Just sticking to the habits every day. And I think that's why habits are probably the single most powerful tool that we have in our daily productivity, daily challenge, daily and anything, right? It's just what makes up our day at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
And I just want to say, like, it's habits have been great. I actually love this topic a lot. So
Yeah,
ending it off, I want to say, I definitely think we should create two more episodes, but not like podcasts. We should create two videos on one just being how to implement good habits and the other being how to remove bad habits, and just a short two episodes for you guys, just so you can understand, because there's a lot to talk about. This whole
there
book,
is,
Atomic
of
Habits,
course.
it's a must read. I mean, it's very popular. I think. I mean, actually, people have a lot of opinions on it, but it definitely gives you a good overview on what habits are in general, and I think it's pretty relevant to everyone
Yeah,
who are
literally, no,
willing.
everyone,
Yeah,
like literally
literally
everyone.
everyone. Yeah, so James Clear makes it
Yeah,
pretty easy for people to understand as well with examples, and that's what
facts.
I like about him as an author. So yeah, thank you guys. We haven't recorded an episode in so long, but we love coming back to this, and generally, thank you guys. We'll make this a habit. Don't worry. It's
Yeah.
it's great. It's great being back. Thank you, Sonaf.
See you. Bye.
Bye.